They didn't just play tough guys, they were tough. These legends were forged in war hardship and raw survival, the kind of men who could break your jaw and still finish the scene. Behind Hollywood's polished facade lie stories of real grit, danger, and courage. Today, we pull back the curtain to reveal the 10 toughest actors in Hollywood history, and number 4's secret past is almost too wild to believe. Audie Murphy. When most people picture Hollywood's toughest men, names like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood might spring to mind. But the toughest man ever to step in front of a camera wasn't a towering cowboy or a rugged outlaw. He was a 5'5", baby-faced Texan named Audie Murphy, whose real-life heroism makes every action star look like they're playing dress-up. Before he ever saw a movie set, Murphy had already lived through more action than any Hollywood script could invent. At just 19 years old during World War II, he single-handedly held off an entire company of German soldiers for over an hour, wounded, surrounded, and almost out of ammunition. When his gun ran dry, he climbed onto a burning tank, manned a machine gun, and kept firing until help arrived. That act earned him the Medal of Honor, the United States' highest military decoration, just one of 28 medals he received before his 21st birthday. Murphy wasn't just brave, he was lethal. Military historians estimate he personally killed between 240 and 300 enemy soldiers, a number so staggering that studio executives worried audiences wouldn't believe it. When he starred as himself in To Hell and Back, producers even toned down the truth, afraid that the real story would sound like Hollywood exaggeration. Director Jesse Hibbs later admitted, "We had to leave out some of Audie's actual feats because no one would have believed them." Off the battlefield, Murphy struggled with the ghosts of war. He suffered from severe PTSD, sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow and waking from nightmares ready to fight invisible enemies. His wife, Wanda Hendricks, once confessed Audie had two sides, the gentle hero the public adored, and the hardened soldier who never truly left the war behind. Yet despite the trauma, Murphy carried himself with quiet humility. Unlike many who sought to play heroes, Murphy wanted the opposite. He preferred comedies and romances, yearning to escape his violent past. But the truth was inescapable. He was Hollywood's toughest man because he'd already survived what most men couldn't even imagine. Behind his boyish smile was a warrior who had faced hell itself and lived to tell the story. Audie Murphy didn't act tough for the cameras. He defined what toughness meant, not through swagger or muscles, but through courage, endurance, and the will to fight when no one else could. Before we move on to the next legend, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give our team a boost of motivation to keep bringing you more incredible Hollywood stories. Charles Bronson. Before he became one of Hollywood's most iconic tough guys, Charles Bronson lived a life so harsh it could have broken lesser men. Born Charles Bukinski, he grew up in a one-room shack as one of 15 children in a poor Pennsylvania coal mining family. By the age of 10, while other kids were playing, Bronson was already working in the dark, suffocating tunnels, hundreds of feet underground, covered in coal dust, helping to feed his family. Those brutal beginnings didn't just shape his body, they forged his soul. Bronson rarely spoke about his past, but when he did, he said, "I suppose I'm attracted to these tough roles because I was raised in violent neighborhoods and saw killing firsthand." The hard stare, the scarred features, the perpetual squint that made him famous, none of that was acting. It was the face of a man who had lived through real struggle and real danger. When World War II broke out, Bronson enlisted in the Army Air Forces, serving as a B-29 aerial gunner. He flew 25 combat missions over Japan and earned a Purple Heart after being wounded in action. His comrades remembered him as a man who stayed unnervingly calm under fire, the kind of guy you wanted in your foxhole when things went bad. After the war, Bronson's road to stardom was anything but glamorous. He worked every odd job imaginable, from onion picker to short-order cook to boxer, before finding his way to Hollywood. Directors didn't know what to do with him. With his rough features and quiet demeanor, he didn't fit the traditional handsome leading man image. So they cast him as thugs, convicts, and killers, not realizing they were dealing with someone who knew violence intimately. Bronson brought a rare authenticity to his roles. Film historian Eddie Muller once said, "When Bronson throws a punch, it doesn't look choreographed. It looks like a man who's been in real fights and knows how to hurt someone." Co-stars confirmed his strength wasn't just for show. Actor John Michael Vincent recalled, "When he grabbed my shirt during a scene, I felt the power in his hands. It was like being caught in a vice. Even death threats from the mafia after Death Wish didn't faze him. When the studio offered bodyguards, Bronson declined. I've lived too long and been through too much to worry about people like that," he said simply. That quiet confidence, the unshakable calm of a man who'd faced death before, made him the embodiment of real toughness. Director Michael Winner summed it up best: Charles doesn't act tough. He simply is tough. From the coal mines of Pennsylvania to the battlefields of the Pacific and the bright lights of Hollywood, Bronson's life was a masterclass in endurance, resilience, and strength. He wasn't playing a role, he was living proof that true grit can't be faked. Lee Marvin. Before he became one of Hollywood's most feared on-screen tough guys, Lee Marvin had already faced death in the real world. A U.S. Marine during World War II, Marvin fought in some of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific, including the Battle of Saipan, where he was struck by machine gun fire that shattered his sciatic nerve. He spent over a year recovering and walked with a slight limp for the rest of his life, a limp he disguised throughout his acting career. Marvin didn't brag about his service. In fact, he despised romanticizing war. When asked about it, he once said bluntly, "I was a Marine sniper in the Pacific. I got shot in the ass and sent home. Any man who says he enjoyed combat is either a liar or a fool." That raw honesty bled into every performance he gave. When Lee Marvin played a killer or a hardened soldier, audiences didn't see acting, they saw authentic experience. Directors and co-stars often described him as quietly dangerous. There was a gravity to him, an aura of someone who had truly seen men die. Actor James Coburn once said, "When Lee walked onto a set, everyone straightened up. You felt the danger even when he wasn't speaking." His toughness wasn't limited to the screen. During filming in Oregon, Marvin got into a bar fight with an entire team of lumberjacks holding his own until the police broke it up. The next morning, bruised but unfazed, he arrived on set early, ready to shoot. That kind of endurance and grit became legendary in Hollywood. Despite his reputation as a brawler, Marvin was more complex than the rough characters he portrayed. He was intelligent, well-read, and surprisingly philosophical. Director Samuel Fuller once said Lee had seen the worst of humanity, and it gave him depth. He could discuss Hemingway one moment, then show you how to kill a man with a knife the next. His performances in The Dirty Dozen, Point Blank, and The Big Red One carried a realism that few actors could match, because he wasn't pretending. He knew what fear, pain, and survival looked like. Film critic Roger Ebert once wrote, "When Lee Marvin threatened someone in a movie, you believed it because Lee Marvin could actually carry out that threat." In a Hollywood full of men pretending to be dangerous, Lee Marvin didn't have to pretend. He had lived it. Steve McQueen. No one embodied coolness and danger quite like Steve McQueen, a man whose real-life adventures often made his movies look tame. Before he became Hollywood's king of cool, McQueen lived a wild, restless life. Abandoned by his father and abused by his stepfather, he ran away from home at 14, surviving on the streets and working odd jobs until he joined the United States Marine Corps. There, his rebellious streak got him demoted 7 times, but it was also where his fearlessness began to shine. Once during an Arctic exercise, a tank carrying 5 Marines broke through the ice and sank. While others froze in shock, McQueen dove into the icy water and saved every single one of them. That moment defined him reckless, heroic, and unstoppable. After leaving the Marines, McQueen drifted from job to job, lumberjack oil rigger, carnival barker, until acting found him. But Hollywood couldn't tame him. He performed nearly all his own stunts, from high-speed motorcycle chases in The Great Escape to fiery rescues in The Towering Inferno. He didn't just play a thrill-seeker, he was one. McQueen's obsession with racing wasn't a hobby. It was life. He competed professionally in both motorcycles and cars, often under fake names to dodge studio insurance bans. In 1970, despite having a broken foot, he finished 2nd overall at the legendary 12 Hours of Sebring race, a feat that stunned the racing world. His toughness went beyond adrenaline. When McQueen learned his name appeared on Charles Manson's hit list, he didn't panic, he simply started carrying a loaded Magnum revolver everywhere he went. No entourage, no bodyguards, just him and his gun. Director John Sturges once said, "The problem with Steve wasn't getting him to do stunts. It was stopping him from doing the ones that could kill him." That fearless spirit, that refusal to fake danger, made McQueen a legend unlike any other. In a town built on illusion, Steve McQueen was the real thing, a man who didn't act tough for the camera because danger was already part of his DNA. Kirk Douglas. Before he was a Hollywood legend, Kirk Douglas was a fighter in every sense of the word. Born Ishur Danielevich, the son of poor Jewish immigrants, he grew up in extreme poverty, often going hungry. But what he lacked in wealth, he made up for with determination. Douglas sold snacks to mill workers as a boy, saved every penny, and wrestled his way to a college scholarship. That same fighting spirit carried him through World War II, where he served as a communications officer on a United States Navy submarine chaser. Facing the constant threat of enemy torpedoes in the cold Atlantic, he learned the meaning of fear, courage, and endurance. Those experiences later shaped the intensity audiences saw on screen, a fiery energy that felt real because it was real. Douglas approached acting with the same ferocity he brought to combat and sport. Before Hollywood, he was a competitive wrestler, and that physical discipline became his trademark. In Spartacus, Douglas trained relentlessly with real ex-gladiators to perfect every move. When warned about a dangerous stunt, he ignored the advice, performed it himself, got injured, and was back on set 2 days later. Director Stanley Kubrick, who often clashed with Douglas, once admitted Kirk is a force of nature. When he decides something's going to happen, it happens. Co-star Burt Lancaster said Kirk doesn't just act a scene, he attacks it. But his real toughness shone long after his prime. In 1991, Douglas survived a helicopter crash that killed 2 people. Then, in 1996, he suffered a massive stroke that nearly ended his career. Most would have given up, but Douglas fought back with the same defiance that defined his life. Through years of painful rehabilitation, he relearned to speak and later wrote a memoir about his recovery, an act of resilience that inspired millions. Director Howard Hawks once said, "Plenty of actors looked tough, but Kirk Douglas was tough." From the slums to the silver screen, from the wrestling mat to near death and back again, Douglas proved that toughness isn't about muscle or swagger. It's about the will to rise every time life knocks you down. Which moment, from Kirk Douglas's incredible life impressed you the most? Tell us in the comments. His story proves that real strength isn't in the body, but in the spirit that never quits. James Cagney. Don't let his small frame fool you. James Cagney was pure dynamite packed into 5 feet 5 inches. Long before Hollywood crowned him the king of gangster films, Cagney had already survived the roughest streets of New York's Lower East Side. In a world ruled by fists and fast talk, he learned early that if you couldn't fight, you didn't last. So he boxed not for sport, but for survival. Those lightning-fast hands and sharp reflexes later became part of his magnetic screen presence. Every punch Cagney threw on camera came from real experience. Directors often said his fight scenes looked too real because they were. During The Public Enemy, his co-star Mae Clarke wasn't warned that he'd actually smash a grapefruit into her face. Her shock on screen was 100% genuine. Cagney brought that same raw intensity to every performance, fast, fierce, and fearless. But Cagney wasn't just a fighter. He was a dancer. His background in tap and stage performance gave him extraordinary balance, agility, and control, a rare mix of grace and power. That duality made him unique, a man who could knock you out or charm you in the same heartbeat. Off-screen, he carried himself with quiet authority. Comedian Bob Hope once joked Jimmy was the kind of guy who'd drop you with a punch, then help you up and dust you off. Cagney himself summed it up best. When you grow up where I did, you either learn to use your fists or get used to the floor. I preferred standing. James Cagney wasn't pretending to be tough, he simply was. A real-life street fighter turned Hollywood legend, he proved that toughness isn't about size, but about the fire inside that refuses to back down. John Wayne. When you think of Hollywood toughness, one name towers above them all: John Wayne. Standing 6'4" with that unmistakable swagger. The Duke didn't just play heroes, he lived like one. Long before fame, Wayne, born Marion Morrison, worked hard labor jobs, hauled props on movie sets, and played college football with the grit of a man destined for more. Wayne's physical strength was legendary. He performed most of his own stunts, often ignoring pain and injury. During the filming of The Alamo, he cracked several ribs in a fall from his horse, then simply taped himself up and kept shooting. Director John Ford once said Duke's toughness isn't an act. I've seen him outwork men half his age in desert heat that would have sent others to the hospital. Even life's worst battles couldn't break him. After being exposed to nuclear fallout while filming The Conqueror, Wayne was diagnosed with cancer and had part of his lung and ribs removed. Months later, he was back on set performing fight scenes in The Sons of Katie Elder with one lung. John Wayne didn't believe in excuses or sympathy. His mantra was simple: courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. And that's exactly what he did on screen and off. In a world full of actors pretending to be heroes, John Wayne was the real deal, a man of grit, endurance, and unshakable will, who proved that true toughness is measured not by how hard you hit, but by how many times you get back up. Robert Mitchum. Few men ever made toughness look as effortless as Robert Mitchum. With his lazy drawl, half-lidded eyes, and quiet defiance, he didn't act like a tough guy, he just was one. Long before fame, Mitchum lived the life of a drifter during the Great Depression, hopping freight trains, taking whatever work he could find, and even landing on a Georgia chain gang after being arrested for vagrancy. He fought in boxing rings, dug ditches, and mined coal jobs that carved the hardness into his soul. That's why when Mitchum played gangsters or anti-heroes, audiences believed every glare, every punch, Director Edward Dmytryk once said Bob never had to prove he was tough. Everyone could feel it. Even a drug scandal couldn't shake him. When arrested for marijuana possession in 1948, Mitchum served 60 days in jail reading poetry and emerging more popular than before. His reaction, a shrug and a smirk. He didn't chase fame, and he didn't fake charm. Robert Mitchum was Hollywood's original outlaw, a man whose toughness came not from bravado, but from surviving a life most actors could only pretend to know. Anthony Quinn. Born in the chaos of the Mexican Revolution, Anthony Quinn came into the world surrounded by struggle and survival. His family fled to Los Angeles when he was still a boy, scraping by in the city's poorest neighborhoods. By the age of 10, Quinn was already working hauling meat in butcher shops, mixing cement on construction sites, and fighting in boxing matches just to help his family eat. Those early years didn't just build his muscles, they built his spirit. Before fame, Quinn was a real laborer, and it showed. On the set of Zorba the Greek, he carried logs so heavy, they normally required 2 men. Director Elia Kazan once said, "Tony doesn't act tough. He is tough." That power comes from real work, not from a gym. Yet beneath that rugged exterior beat the heart of a poet. Quinn could throw a knockout punch and then talk passionately about art, sculpture, or philosophy. Actress Sophia Loren, his frequent co-star, said Anthony had the body of a warrior and the soul of a poet. Even into his 60s, Quinn insisted on doing his own dangerous stunts, never hiding behind doubles. He didn't need to prove his strength, he lived it. From a childhood of hunger to the heights of Hollywood, Anthony Quinn embodied true toughness, not just in muscle, but in spirit, grit, and soul. Charlton Heston. Before he was Moses Ben-Hur or Michelangelo, Charlton Heston was a real-life warrior of both body and principle. During World War II, he served as an aerial gunner in the U.S. Army Air Forces, flying dangerous missions that demanded nerves of steel. Later, when Hollywood called, he brought that same courage to the screen, never asking for doubles, never backing down from danger. In Ben-Hur, Heston spent months mastering the art of chariot racing, performing nearly all of his own stunts, including the legendary crash that almost threw him from the chariot. On the 10 Commandments, he endured the brutal Sinai desert heat that hospitalized other cast members, yet he never once complained. Director William Wyler said Chuck had physical courage that bordered on reckless. But Heston's toughness went beyond muscle, it was moral. He marched with Martin Luther King Jr., stood for causes both praised and controversial, and faced criticism with unwavering conviction. Actress Sophia Loren recalled Charlton never asked for special treatment. He believed a hero should earn every inch of what he stands for. If you enjoyed this journey through Hollywood's toughest legends, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next deep dive into the real stories behind the silver screen.